What is the truth in the stories we are told? We've been given a story of a world fueled by separation. We've become separate from one another, separate from the earth, ultimately separate from the true nature of ourselves. It's time we learn the truth. It's time you rewrite your story. It's time to realign with who it is that you really are. This is the fifth dimension.
You are infinite and eternal. We are infinite and eternal.
Our natural essence, we could say, is simply being.
We have this awakening coming together as a perfect storm.
We're ready for this. We have the capacity inside. We just got to find that.
All right, we're on the air. We're recording. Matevhu
Right, sure.
Davhana, welcome to the
Yes.
podcast, man. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Evan. Thanks for the invite. And it's been good. I'm looking forward to have a conversation with you. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love connected with you on Twitter, and I was like, I love this guy's tweets. Like, I don't know him that well. I don't know much about him, but I can tell like you get it. Like, there's something about like we're very much on a similar wavelength in like sort of our perspective on the world, I would say, in a sense. I mean, I'd love to start if you could just talk about sort of your own journey, your own background, kind of give,
Mhm.
because I would love to learn more about you as well. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
much
sure.
about you outside your tweets, but I'd love to hear
Yeah,
about your
no.
own journey and what it is, how it is that you got to where you are now.
Yeah. Sure. Where do you even start? Because it's a growth journey. So if one is to ask, so how did you get here? You would just say, that's how I got here. I just grew, and I've been growing since I was a child.
Right.
That would be the long and short of it. But
I love that.
you evolve over time. But I think for me, obviously you grew up. I was born raised in South Africa, and I still live in South Africa, of course. Growing up, we go to church. That's how the whole at least introduction to the spirituality and so on would have started. And as you grow, you go to university, and then you start questioning things, and then it's like, but this doesn't make sense. In other words, poking holes on your religion. In this case, for me, it was Christianity, and then started to disconnect because a lot of things are not making sense, are not standing on their own merit. And then you're at that stage where you're starting to be rebellious, and that's where I dropped formal religion, and I started to go into a lot of reading. Started to buy my own books, and then that's where the whole journey of self-discovery, I suppose, started to kind of intensify. As I'm reading a lot of biographies, and in that a lot of other spiritual stuff as well. Your typical new age stuff. I read a lot of those books. Probably just pick up a name, a title. I probably have read it. And then as time goes, that was throughout the university, and then post that you start working, and the journey continues. You continue to accumulate all this knowledge. Just sponge sucking everything that you find online, following blogs and so on. So that's the growth process, I think, that I was talking about, that you just grow over time.
Right.
And then I think about 10, 11 years ago, I got introduced into Buddhist meditations, and all of it online as well, to start off with. And then later on, I met some real live people who were following the meditation according to the Buddhist tradition. And that's where I think I started to intensify the depth of my spiritual understanding and so on. And and then I started to get to invest more time into the studies of Buddhist texts, and use all of that new age and so on stuff that I was building over time as a to balance it out. And then because of that, it all made so much sense. The stuff that I was learning from the Buddhist texts. Yeah, and I think in a nutshell, that brought me to where I am now. The Buddhism makes a very strong foundation for the kind of stuff that I tweet about, as an example.
Right.
So yes, that's in a nutshell the background. And of course, in parallel to that, you get married, you have children, you
Right.
build a career on the side. Well, it sounds like my career is almost like a side thing, to be honest with you. I've studied an IT degree, and then that's what I've been working. I've been working in the IT industry ever since. Yeah,
Right.
that's in a nutshell has been my journey. I've traveled as part of my work, been to the United States, I think several times, maybe 6, 7 times. Yeah, yeah, I've been to all over Europe and so on. Yeah, and as you travel, you meet a lot of people, different people. You build on your perspective as well. Your mindsets transform as well as part of all the traveling and meeting. Now we don't even have to travel. We just meet people like yourself
Yeah.
online.
Right. No,
You see,
definitely.
so that makes it even more beautiful. It's cheaper and easier to keep on building that perspective. And yeah, I love Twitter because it connects us.
Yeah.
Initially, I wasn't very fond of it. You think, and I know many people have this view of Twitter as a vile and very ugly platform and so on. But we can make it what we want it to be. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people who are there. A lot of people that at least I'm connected with on Twitter seem to be very sound and know what they want out of to get out of that platform, and they're going for it.
Yeah.
And so it's like anything in the world. You can say nuclear is bad. It is bad if you think it is bad. It can be very good. You
Right.
know,
100%.
anything can be. Anyway, yeah. So that's a long and short of my background. Yes,
I love it.
unless there's something that you want to clarify, because
Uh,
otherwise one can talk the whole day about themselves.
right, right. Well, I'd love to know what was sort of, I don't come from like a particular religious background in a sense, so I don't have that like
Mhm,
organized religion like upbringing. So I was very much
mhm.
always sort of free to ask my own questions and sort of explore.
Beautiful.
Um, so I'm curious, what were some of like the questions that you were having, like when you were questioning like Christianity? Like, what was some of those questions that like couldn't be answered by that religion, and what was it maybe about Buddhism that you felt like sort of fulfilled what it was that you were asking? What was sort of the, you say the, I guess the main differences in the questions that you were
Yeah,
asking?
yeah, no, 100%. There's so many questions, right?
Right.
There's so many questions. Yeah, some which is very basic, like the whole creation process. Yeah, it just falls apart from the Genesis. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that at least you know about the whole Genesis
Right.
process from the Bible. This is how creation started. There was a guy, and then he was bored, and then God created a wife for him from his rib, and
Yeah.
then they have children, and then the child go and get married to some people on the other side after the other one was killed. The other one, that whole story, yeah, just logically, it just even as a start, because you have this child mindset of trying to make sense of it. It's just not making sense
Hmm.
logically. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're not supposed. It's not supposed to be that logical. That's just one side of it. And then the whole thing of there's one God, and then created everything, and we, we all his children, and so on. And then you start So if we all children and loved equally by this one God, so how do you explain so much disparity in how we come out? So much suffering, so much pain, and things like that, you know.
Right.
And then also you look at many of the people who are teaching these things. Yeah, they're like worlds apart from what they're teaching. There's no that teaching by example kind of thing. Yeah, so those are some of the fundamental stuff that fell apart. And then of course you can go on and on. Whereas when you start to take the same questions and put the into the Buddhist point of view, all of those things get so easily answered to an intellectual mind. It's not supposed to, oh, you just believe it on faith, or yeah, you can't question, yeah, just the word of the Almighty, you don't question it, you just believe, and so on. Whereas on the other side, questions are highly encouraged. You are encouraged to not believe anything based on because somebody says so. You are encouraged to rip it apart until it makes sense to you, not just believe because it said so. You know, so that's the main difference, if I'm to put it that way.
Right. No, definitely. And I
Yeah.
think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a big problem in a lot of not just organized religions, but a lot of the structures that we've built is sort of the idea of like blind faith and trusting in something that you can't question. And so it really goes against, I think, a lot of our nature to do that. I mean, I come from a teaching background, and I even noticed that there's a lot of almost like obedient, like teaching obedience, and like there's not a lot of encouragement for students to ask questions,
Yes.
for
To think
example.
for yourself. Yeah.
Right. And how to think for yourselves, and really, you know, don't be afraid to question anything, whether it's authority, religion, or just all of these different structures. And I think, um, I don't know, I feel like we're at a point right now where that's really revealing itself, that a lot of people don't question. And it's almost sort of a gift when you just start asking those questions and you're not afraid to ask those questions. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people, and this isn't like a judgment on Christianity as a whole by any means, but there's a lot of people who have asked those questions, and when they're not answered, it's just like, oh, okay, I won't dig any further. Clearly, I'm not allowed to ask that question. And I think that can be
Correct.
right. It's kind of, I don't know. That's not how you're going to grow. You're going to grow through questioning. You're going to grow through exploring these topics deeper. And it's interesting because I think what you said about Christianity maybe not meant to be taken logically. I think that's a really good like point, because I don't think it's supposed to be. I think it is maybe supposed to be more of like a moral story, or like you know, learning from the morality and the ethics of it. And you know, when we rigidly do fundamentalism on something like that, it can have some it can lead to a system that goes against its original intention or principle. And I think we just all need to come back to like, what is our intention? What are we trying to
Yes.
embody? And
100%.
I think that's I think that can be really important, at least especially in today's day and age. I mean, do you find like what is sort of your own, I guess, relationship with the idea of intention or intention setting? Is that something that you're conscious with, and how has that, I guess, guided you, like being conscious about what your intention is when you're asking questions or when you're sort of exploring these topics? Because you know, I myself have had to be, when I am in alignment with like a higher intention, I definitely notice more of that, like more like manifestation, more actually achieving what I want to achieve, but more being just in alignment with source and connecting to a higher power. What is sort of your relationship, I guess, with intention and intention setting?
Yeah. Yeah, that tend to be where um, how do I put it? the crux of the matter sits with the intention. For instance, let's say I'm dealing with an issue with one of the people that I work with that reports to me at work, as an example, or any problem at work. What I tend to notice, at least in myself, is that if I don't refine my intention, start to refine to clarify to clear my intention first, that then I feel a lot heavier, and it's very difficult to get to solution. Relationship becomes very stressful as well, both personal and professional relationships. But when I align my intention with the higher purpose, be it to make to get into a solution, to improve things, and to help, to also have the interest of the other person at heart. In other words, involving that compassionate kind of mindset for the other person. Instantly, I tend to find a much better solution. Whereas it's the opposite that happens if I go with the kind of wrong mindset of wanting to prove how wrong the other person is, of wanting to highlight the yeah, kind of the bad side of the other person, and almost wanting to have that as an end, as a conclusion to prove how wrong, or how you know. So if my intention is positive, and that kind of advance with a mindset of advancement for the other, always the problem tend to be solved amicably, even if it's not positive for either myself or the other side, but almost all the time. Say for instance, I'm in the end, I'm not getting the kind of outcome that I wanted. I'm still not I'm not disappointed, or even in a situation where it's the other person who's not advantaged with the outcome. I'm also don't feel bad about that the outcome was not favoring the other person, because my intention was good. It was very clear and positive. Yeah, so yeah, that's that, and it's difficult to have that mindset, because we always want to have the mindset of winning, to have the mindset of getting the other person to be wrong and me right. And try and unplug from that default mindset takes a bit of effort, but with practice, it becomes easier.
Right. No, definitely. And I think you hit on an important point, because I think a lot of people, there is like almost like competition, whether it be amongst workplace, whether it be in our personal relationships, whether it be, something that, like, interactions that don't need to be competitive, that don't need to be, I'm going against you. Like and when you're doing that, you're naturally, the spirit of competition, you have winning and you have losing. Like, you're kind of creating that polarity in competition, and it's going to be, it's not going to be that desired outcome that you want. And I feel like we need to sort of switch our mindset, because when we come in with intentions, regardless of the outcome, we can feel good about having good intentions. Like, and I think it's very much lost in our world to look at intentions, to recognize other people's intentions. A lot of times people will look at specific outcomes, and maybe somebody intended to do good, right? They intended for a positive outcome for everybody, but it just didn't happen. There's still a lot of like blame, or it's like, oh, how could you do this? And it's like, well, if we look at their intention, and they intended to do good, then there's less reason for us to get worked up about it, because we recognize that, hey, they tried their best. They were coming from a good place. And I feel like emphasizing our intentions, a lot of times it's all we can do. I mean, I've faced particular backlash in the past about like saying something wrong, or just there's been topics on this podcast there people are like, how could you say that? And I'm like, I'm coming from a good place, I promise. My heart's in the right place. And it's like, well, you can only kind of do so much at particular points, because if they looked at the intention, it's like, do we need to be upset, I guess? But and just I all sort of co-creating, recognizing one another, that we all have different perspectives. And I mean, would you say that I saw a tweet you talking about competition versus co-creation, and I feel like
Yeah.
the other day, and I feel like that it very much plays into this idea. Do you feel like we need to, is there something in our society that is very materialistic, very competitive, that we are sort of conditioned into? And how would you say that we can move away from like competition, in the sense of like we were just talking about, like in the work,
Yeah.
and sort of moving to co-creating, being communal, being uh, one with everybody, and sort of working
Mm.
towards a higher purpose? Because I think
Yeah.
it covers a lot of elements, whether it be just in the workplace, or if you're looking at society as a whole. I think we could really use that mindset, I would say.
Mm. No, no. Yeah, this touches definitely all elements of life. It starts in the family structure. I think it even starts before we were. It starts when we were babies.
Mm,
We very much self-centered. It's a survival kind of thing that we have to do. And like I've got three children, um, I can see that my youngest is three. Is a girl, and then
mm,
you can see that there's let's say she's eating something. There's some element, if it's something that she enjoys a lot, she's not going to share. She just wants to keep it to herself and so on. So
mm,
there's this, that whole self, unless maybe she can see that there's so much plenty of it, and then it's not a small pocket, then she'll be more than happy to share and so on. So there, I think could lie one of element of our competitiveness, or why we want to um, I suppose hoard things, because the competition obviously has many elements to it. But I suspect there's this element of lack that is deeply ingrained in us
mm,
somehow, that makes it a fertile ground for wanting to be better, not realizing that actually anybody can achieve anything. There's nothing that anybody can achieve that others can't if they put an effort to it, and so on. Obviously, there's the whole thing of time and things like that, which if we are to go into that deeper level, we may not end up coming out. So I think so there's the element of lack, I think, that we have as deeply ingrained. We think there's not enough to go around. As a
Mm,
result, we need to fight and compete for the little there is, not taking enough time to realize that, in fact, there's abundance of everything.
mm,
It's just the mindset that we have somehow been conditioned into, this mindset of there's not enough. As a result, we need to then compete, as opposed to expand what there is through collaboration, through co-creation, through and so on. And the other thing I think, which also um, contribute to this idea of competition, is we see ourselves as
Mm.
separated. We don't see ourselves in that communal as interdependent to each other. In other words, if this other person is doing well, I'm directly doing well. If I'm contributing to your success, not even indirectly, directly actually, I'm growing. I'm contributing to my own personal growth.
Mm.
It's not even the whole karma thing or what goes around it. Immediately, if I help you grow, immediately I feel good.
Yeah.
That's now not even in the future. So if once we realize that through me giving, which is a contribution to somebody else's development and advancement, I'm benefiting immediately.
Right.
And if we have that mindset, then giving or contributing to other people or collaborating will not be a too far-fetched idea that is for religious people, is for people who are wealthy or philanthropists and things like that. Everybody will be so eager to give when we realize that we are all just cells in one body called life, contributing to each other's growth. In other words, if I like we can also see ourselves as you are a hand, I'm the foot in one body. If the hand start to be, no, you foot, I don't like you, so I'm not gonna contribute to the development of the body, I'm screwing myself.
Right.
Yeah. In a true sense of the word. So there's a bit of a nonsensical attitude that I think is because we're not so conscious of what we do. That's why we don't realize that we're shooting ourselves in the foot actually by being selfish, by being so overly competitive.
Right.
Of course, in a logically speaking, competition has its own benefits in that it contributes to the growth of industry. It helps to expand options and so on and so on. Yeah, to the extent that we're still so undeveloped in our perspective, we need some sort of competition to stimulate us to grow.
Right.
But when we reach a certain level of development, mental development, that is, competition is no longer a stimulant.
Right.
We stimulate it from within, from wanting to contribute. So even if I'm a sole uh, what is it? I have no competition in the product or the area that I'm on. I still keep on developing it, not to be ahead of other people since there's no competition, but to continue to advance others.
Mm.
So I think it's just an element of development as a whole. So
Right.
if we want to tweak, to improve on that, we need to maybe do more of this kind of conversation to show the carrot or the benefit of collaboration to me as an individual. It's not being individualistic, that for you to contribute to the benefit of others, this is what you get.
Right.
And then for me to have this mindset, maybe I need to spend more time thinking about it and then developing my mindset, transforming it from selfishness, which is the default. This is the default tape we're born with.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
somehow society fuel it through competitive schooling, competitive sporting, competitive everything. It's fed, and then it gets fatter and fatter. So we need to consciously take the fire off this mindset that we are born with, that is very unhelpful.
Right. No, definitely.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And you hit on a lot of good points there. And I think it is about finding that balance, if you will,
Mm.
because it's like competition is good in a lot of ways. I mean, and we display it like it's obviously a
Mhm.
natural human tendency for us to
Yeah.
be competitive.
Mhm.
I mean, you could even look in the wild at other animals and they're competitive within the animal kingdom, within their own
Yeah.
domains. So we have that element to us. And it's like, how can we embody more of the collaborative spirit? How can we more create that and create systems that embody that as well? And I think it does have to start at the individual level because the everything going on in the world and all the systems we create, I mean, that's just a reflection of what's happening individually, because we create those systems, we
Mhm.
create the society, we create everything that is all the technology, how it's being used, all of it, it's our systems. So it's like, if we can begin to individually embody collaboration, community, cooperation, really that connected interdependence, one being that we all are, if we can really embody that and recognize that, if I'm going to give you something, that's going to help me like here and now. That's not even going to like push off my rewards. The rewards are here now, like that. And like being able to embody that, I think that is so key moving forward, because I think we've really moved down really far down in terms of the competition and the materialistic sense, and that uh, we've skewed so far that way that it feels like the pendulum is going to naturally come back the other way. I feel like it almost has to. That's sort of the laws of nature in a sense, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I have no doubt that we will come back to this. Remember, because in essence, the essence of we are is so pure and good that we all have this thing inside. So even
Right,
the darkest person with the darkest mind, these things resonate to them. The only problem is that obviously the other stuff is very strong. Maybe at the
right,
moment in their minds, it hasn't developed as the negative side, but and the beautiful part is that with effort, everybody can ignite that goodness that is in that we all have naturally.
right,
So that's the part that gives me hope.
right, definitely. And I think it's a lot of times when we talk about like um, this sort of co-creation, working together. A lot of times people, um, I think a lot of our conditioning, like a lot of people will hear that and they'll be like, "No, that's communism," or "No, like you can't do this. Like we need like." So then they'll tie it back into like, economic systems and all of this and that. And it's like I feel like what we need to create is something that we haven't really seen yet at a
Mm.
collective level, right? Like it's something that, us working together and co-creating, like we're not trying to create some sort of dystopian, like,
No,
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 communistic system. So like,
it's so wrong to think of it that way. Yes, I
right,
agree. I agree.
exactly. But I think the conditioning, and a lot of times that
Mm,
competitive spirit will push back on it, and it'll
mm,
give sort of the fear-based response to it. And that's the conditioning that we have. Like I understand where people come
mm.
from that, because I think there
Yeah,
is
no, communism doesn't work. And I'm
right,
not even going to be a proper, I'm not a proponent of that. I think this,
right,
what we're talking about can work with the current economic system that we have of free trade,
right,
yeah, capitalism, the way it is, it can work. In fact, uh, all these big corporates that we see now, obviously there's a lot of dodgy things that is happening there that I don't want to get to,
yeah,
but if you look at the fundamentals of some of these big companies that are now flourishing, they started with the idea of we want to empower people, we want to give people, and of course, as these things start to grow, they say, oh, okay, actually, we can make a lot of money out of these things. We can
right,
we can sell people adverts, we can do this, we can do that, but the benefit, the fundamental is still there, that we are now able to talk literally for free as a result of somebody's ingenuity. Somebody who just, okay, I just want people to connect. And
yeah,
there was nothing more to it. They didn't necessarily want to make billions out of it, but of course they are, because of the value that they've created in the system. And this
right,
is then obviously the system paying them back for the value that they've created. And then you could argue that it is no single person obviously created a particular platform. It was a group of people who were just passionate about empowering people, and then they just come up with this great product that we now are beneficiaries of. So that all of that was built on this current system that we tend to overly criticize as if all of it doesn't work. There's a lot of stuff that works with this with the current system that doesn't need to be overhauled. It's just the advancement of the mindset that needs to happen, that we can take the same thing and just transform it. That instead of benefiting the few individuals, then you could look at spreading the benefit. And many other companies, very big companies, they're already doing this. So I think, to take it too far in terms of let's just take this clean slate and then start again will be another view that probably is not gonna be practical. That's just my perspective on this.
I definitely agree with you. And it's like, we can look at, in the world today, there are more middle-class people than there are in poverty, which is like, if you look at human history, like that's kind of a miracle, in terms of how much suffering there has been through the thousands of years that we've had civilizations. And it's like, we're at a time where there's more abundance available to all people all over the world. And there's almost 8 billion people. So it's kind of a miracle that we have so much wealth and abundance that is available. I mean, obviously there's still immense poverty in particular places and things that we need to continue to address and continue to look at and build upon. But there's our growth within this system. It's not something that you necessarily want to just snap your fingers and throw away because there's a few cracks in it. So it's like, let's keep growing. Let's recognize the good and, just have that sort of subtle shift to where we take this rugged individualistic perspective and be more communal, be more open, be more loving, and infuse that within the system if it's possible. And I think something I saw you tweeting about again the other day. I love your tweets. I see all your tweets. Is the idea of success.
Oh, cool, man.
And I think success kind of plays into this as well. Do you think we need to sort of redefine, or not even redefine, how would you sort of define what success is? Because I think it's a concept that it's going to be different for each person. But what is your?
Yeah, no, definitely. I sometimes can be too simplistic, I know, in my views, but it helps me because maybe I'm simple-minded like that, because I believe things should be simpler.
Right, they should.
So
I agree.
it shouldn't be too complicated, because if you go around ask some people what is success, you ask 10 people, you're gonna probably get 10 different ideas. But it seems that in general we think the person, because they are prominent, they have all the material resources, all the money, the ease in the world, they are successful. And I don't agree with that general assumption. And then hardly do I just want to bow into somebody as a success because they're maybe on the top of the ladder in a typical corporate, or they're president or minister or whatever. No, so success for me, it's very personal. It depends. What is it that one has set out to achieve? And if they were successful in achieving that, then they are successful. Obviously, right. This is somebody could have. All I want is to just be an ordained monk and able to spend maybe 6 hours a day meditating and helping other people, or as a nun or whatever. And they manage to tick all those things, and they're achieving it. They've got zero kind of cent on their name. They own nothing. Who am I to go and say, no, you are not successful because you are literally poor?
Right.
Say that. Well, that person, in every sense of a word, they are successful because that's what they wanted to achieve, and they are achieving it, or they've achieved it.
Right.
Another one wanted to be a CEO of a multinational, and they managed to get there. And then, as long as achieving that makes them happy, and then they're able to tick their boxes, then they are definitely successful. But we can't then want to apply that kind of definition of success to everyone. Another one just want to have children and have their children to grow up to be good people, and then go and do their own things, and then out of that they derive great pride, and they feel successful because of doing that. And who are we to come and say, no, you don't have a career, you can't be successful, you're not successful, you can't be sitting with the same you can be sitting in the same kind of a table with other successful people as a success. Yeah, that's just my perspective on success in general. It could be simplistic, but it works for me.
Right. Right. No,
Yeah.
definitely. But I feel the same way. And I think the example of the monk versus the CEO, that really spells it out perfectly. Because, if somebody wants to be a monk and they go and they do everything that you just described, who are we to say that they're not successful? That's just sort of our own judgment of us trying to fit them in a particular definition. And I think a lot of people sort of have this definition of success in today's society of, a lot of money, materialism, all of that. And, there's nothing wrong with wanting to achieve that by any means. But I think when we sort of define ourselves solely by things like money, things like materialism, and make that really our only uh, way to be successful, if we think that's the only way, then I really feel like that leaves us unfulfilled. That leaves us looking for more. I mean, there's a lot of examples I've heard of stories of people who are billionaires, right? They have all the money in the world, but they're miserable. And it's like, okay, why is that? And I think there's a deeper part of life, something that we all have access to that we can tap into, something that brings more fulfillment than just money, just materialism. And I think that finding that, it's definitely a difficult challenge especially if we don't have sort of the background. But I think, it comes from a lot of what we've already talked about, asking deeper questions, a willingness to.
I don't think it's difficult, to be honest with you, to get. I think people who are in a traditional or in a kind of generally accepted definition of success, people who are successful in that kind of way have a much better chance at getting the real fulfillment, because they know how to work hard, they know they've got some kind of work ethic, they know how to add effort to pursue what they want, and that's all that is needed. But to have fulfillment, it's just that the focus is no longer outside, but you're going towards the different directions.
Right.
Sitting down, having more reflection time, more awareness, and then just accessing happiness from inside. And the other reason why I think they have a better chance is because they've already kind of ticked that box that everybody is chasing, a billion or whatever, having 1,000 houses or whatever the things that people want. They've already checked all of those things, and then they know from personal experience that there's nothing there. You're not gonna move the dial on your happiness by accumulating those things. So then they're able to refocus on something else, because they almost know without a shadow of a doubt that getting another billion is not gonna make me happy. Right. Having another company listed or whatever the things is not gonna make me happy. So then they're able to redirect that focus and that great dedication into the real thing, Whereas for somebody who hasn't ticked all those boxes, they start thinking, no, I think I'll be happier if I just have more money, if I just have this, if I just have that. Whereas for those quote unquote successful people, that is already done.
Right.
So I think
Right.
they stand a good chance.
Right. No, definitely. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's, if anything, I think it comes from that glance into like outside of the conditioned mind, into the other perspective. And I think a lot of people maybe don't do it, or take that perspective just because they're not introduced to it, right? I mean, but if somebody does have all of that money and it's like they're actively seeking and they're actively looking for some, like, fulfillment, they have that awareness, the recognition that, yeah, I have all of this, but I still feel like crap. Like, why is that? Right. And it's, I think the awareness and the ownership, like taking ownership of our personal struggles, and the taking ownership of our judgments that we place on others, or the judgments we place on the world. I think that's deeply empowering to take that step to uh, find fulfillment. And it's interesting because I think it's kind of a paradox, and I'm sure you would agree with this in a sense, that fulfillment, abundance, all of those, like the feelings of joy, like they're already there, and they're waiting to be recognized. Like, we already
Yeah.
have that within us, and it doesn't need to be, like, the idea of even seeking it is kind of misguided, because we don't need
Mm.
to go truly seeking it. It's we just need to shift our perspective a bit and sort of recognize it. It's like waiting to be recognized. And I think for a lot of people, maybe we do have to go on sort of our own personal journey to undo a lot of our conditioning, I guess, and to sort of unlearn things and relearn and study and gain all these different practices. But the actual fulfillment, it's right there. Just a shift of
Yeah.
perspective, change the dial, you know?
There's a there's a quote I like. I'm almost obsessed with. This is a quote by Confucius. He
Mhm.
says, "Life is very simple, yet we insist on making it complicated."
Yes.
Which then ties into what you're saying, that there's nothing to seek. Everything is already there, but because of, I suppose, our design, yeah, we tend to like complicating things,
Yeah.
going on a pilgrimage far away, when you can just sit wherever you are and then access everything that you want
Yeah.
from within. You
Yeah.
know, so that's the saddest part. And unfortunately, if you try, you can't convince somebody by repeating that incarnation that everything is already there. You almost need to let people free to go and explore, and then knowing very well that eventually you're going to come back here where
Yeah.
you're sitting. Yeah, you can shoot all the way to wherever you're shooting, but
Yeah.
eventually you're gonna come back here. You can almost say, when you're ready, yeah, just give me a ring and then we'll talk.
Right.
Yeah, but for now you're free to go explore, to go seek.
Right. 100%.
Uh,
And
yeah,
I think you're right. I think almost everybody does kind of need to go on that a little bit, or sort of take
yeah,
their own journey to come back to themselves in a sense.
yeah.
And it's the paradox of it all. And it's
No,
interesting because when we try and like put it into words, no words can actually like bring the feeling of like what it will bring. Like, you have to like sort of experience it yourself. It's like the idea of
yes.
enlightenment. Once you speak of it, you're no longer there. Like,
No, no,
it's all gone.
you can't talk it. You can't talk it. It's an experience thing. That's why I was saying, even with the so-called rich, super rich, and successful, and so on people,
Mhm.
because they've been through the journey, the experience is so clear that, oh no, at least I know there's nothing there. I've been to that door, opened it, lived it, nothing. Here,
Right.
I've done it. There's nothing there. Even if they come out and tell us, no, you don't need to proceed to pursue these things. There's nothing that we're not going to believe them.
Right.
We're still gonna, no, but I think I need to experience it myself. Yeah, but you're saying it because you already got it.
Right. Right. And then you go through that same journey, and it's like, wow, he was right the whole
You was
time.
right. Exactly.
Although I suppose it wouldn't hurt to go to have, or be abundant in wealth, I suppose, materially, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's not necessary. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
We don't need to put ourselves through unnecessary hardships, I would say, to get there.
Yeah,
And
and I think that's what you just said. There is the heart of the matter, that we can do that. Circling back to your point of intention, if the intention is right, there are many people who are, I'm sure, very rich. The intention was never to get rich, but maybe was the passion they wanted um, to, to, to solve a particular problem, and it became so valuable that the solution that they put up, and then
right,
uh, directly that generated the wealth that they have. There are many people, I'm sure you know about
yeah,
who got wealthy through that way. It was not such a direct path. They didn't set out to be wealthy, but to solve a problem, a real
right,
problem. Through that, if the intention is to do good, to advance others, to solve real problems for humanity and for other living beings, then if in so doing you end up rich, then it's fine.
right. No, definitely, and I agree with that. And I think that, like, just pursuing passion should be the like and I look at, like, my teaching perspective, like, we should be teaching that to kids from a very young age. Like, pursue passion. What is it you're passionate about? How can you pursue it? How can you reach goals that you want to reach in that passion? How can you help solve challenges others are facing, challenges you may be facing yourself, right? I mean, the greatest like, if there's something in our lives that we could use that would solve something of our own problems, if it doesn't exist, why not just create it, right? Like, that's the beauty of, like, imagination. That's everything was started in the brain. And so it's, if anything, it's like, and with, like, the mind, right? We sometimes, I think, the mind gets a bad rap in meditation circles, and, like, people talk about, I want to turn off the mind completely. I don't want to live in the mind. And it's like,
Oh God.
yeah, I understand, but there's, when we can tap into the gifts of the mind, the imagination, all of, visualization, really see where we want to go. There's a lot of beauty that can come from that. So I think it's just about uh, recognizing passion, going inward to find it. Like, it's, the passion is inside of us, and then bringing that out instead of looking for the passion all around us, when it's, there's nothing in the outer world that will make you as fulfilled as what's in here if you pursue what's in here. So it's, I don't know, it's a beautiful journey when you could take that. So, I mean,
Yeah, 100% agree.
I would love to ask, what is sort of
Please.
your, like, what is your own, like, daily practice now to, connect with a higher power? Is it like you meditate? What is sort of, your own daily practice look like, I would
Okay.
say?
Yeah, because like I said, I'm a Buddhist, so my daily practice entail prayers mixed with meditation, and the main practice, of course, is not in meditation and prayer. Is in trying is in implementing those things in our day-to-day lives. For instance, in meditation we're building these good attitudes like compassion, patience, wisdom, love, and so on and so on. That's what we do when we're sitting in meditation, trying to get our minds to get more and more familiar with those positive mindsets. And the idea is that we then take those positive mindsets into our day-to-day life. That's where the real practice is,
Right.
in essence. That I'm busy with my work, and then somebody just rubbed me off the wrong way. How do I apply those teachings, those things that I was practicing during a formal morning meditation, into that real world scenario? How do I transform the situation? Not being stoic or appearing as somebody who doesn't feel pain or
Right.
any of the dodgy stuff. No, but real self transformation, because all of it is happening inside. People are just going to be people. Shooting vile stuff everywhere because they haven't been they haven't been working on themselves developing their own positive mindsets, and then is then use that to say, yeah, this person is clearly in trouble inside, and then how do I then, instead of arising the same kind of mindset that is troubling them in me, how do I then quickly, obviously it will come up, anger, hatred, and kind of all the bad stuff will come up, but how do I quickly mute this before it starts spreading and becomes a full-blown explosion, or some kind of retaliation of some kind of attitude, passive aggression, and things like that, so that's where the practice is for me. How do I incorporate this into my day-to-day life? And the more I try, the more I feel good, the more I feel that I've contributed to somebody. Like there's nothing transformative to somebody who's being, say, rude intentionally or unintentionally, and then you are able to quickly transform that situation into something, teaching them without saying a word to them. Not saying you're condoning the behavior or anything, but you're just diffusing the situation through your own mind, and be kind back to them. And see them almost like realizing that, oops, yeah, no, I was wrong. Sometimes they come and apologize, sometimes they don't, but eventually they realize. That's just one scenario on how to the actual practice. So yeah, that's in a nutshell how I practice. There's a formal part of the practice, but that's just one step in preparation for the actual practice, which is in real life.
I love that. And I think
Yeah.
I've definitely taken on the same approach, where it's like the meditation itself extends far beyond the actual sitting and like formally meditating. It's all day, every day, like, constant awareness and bringing it, bringing it back to presence, the present moment, when you can sit and bring the present into your in like formal meditation, you're much more able to do it. The more you practice, you're much more able to do it in the day to day and recognize where, in the past, maybe somebody would, like you said, rub you the wrong way. Instead of lashing out, you have that like moment of, I don't need to lash out here. And you bring a compassion to the situation. And I think that is the essence of meditation, really. It is so much further beyond just formally sitting and meditating. The benefits in the day to day and what it can bring is so profound. Like when I started meditating, I didn't know that was actually what I was getting into. Like that was going to be the result. But as I've done it, over the last several years, I've learned like that is the practice in itself. That is what you're really embodying by meditating, and it's
Yeah, no, 100%. Of course, the actual sitting practice has many benefits
right.
which I think are publicly known. But there's this aspect that I'll just let me highlight as well, that you clearly are implementing as well, that often is not known, that it's about transforming our minds so that we could be better people in the real world. It's not being so that we can be like some weirdos who's just
yeah.
Anyway,
Some monk up in the Himalayas, like, right.
Yeah,
It's
anyway, yeah.
absolutely. So awesome, man. We're already at about an hour. I mean, I feel like this kind of flew by. So I mean, is there
Yeah, I
anywhere
did.
you would? I feel like we, in theory, could just keep talking for hours. Like I could tell that we're on the same wavelength for a lot of these subjects. But is there anywhere like you would want to send the listeners, one, to like interact with you? I mean, obviously your Twitter profile, you could put that out there, but and also any just like resources that you find helpful or that you think could be a good place for listeners to go to, kind of based on what we've already talked about.
Um,
Could be
yeah,
books.
I think for me personally, I don't have a whole lot of other publications or anything like that I do. I just put out my thoughts through those tweets that I put out. And of course, there's a whole lot of other things that I write that I that I don't get to
Yeah.
publish. Maybe later on, I'll compile some of these thoughts into a book, or
Mm.
or series of books. But as for the material that helps me to keep growing is like I mentioned, I'm a Buddhist, and there's just no ambiguity around that, so I tend to follow more the Buddhist teachings, and that's what builds my foundation from which I talk, and then of course I leverage all the other readings that I've done prior for many years. I would just read anything, and like I said, then that's how I go about it. So.
Mm.
So yeah, and I don't necessarily like to say, oh no, this is the books that people should
Right.
read. Yeah, it all depends on where the people are, and we eventually all come to the same point, but how we get there, it always varies depending on where a person is. So I get this question a lot. So like people will ask me, so what books would you recommend, or what
Mm.
blogs and stuff you do recommend? And when I do that, you can see the person's just like, oh, they're not. They don't resonate with the stuff that I'm recommending. So
Right.
now I'm just like, oh, you can read whatever feels comfortable for you, because what I know I just didn't get straight here. Yeah, it
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
and I fully understand that we all have our own path and journeys which will eventually take us to where we need to be.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. And if anything, I think if somebody wants like a book or something, I would say just go to the bookstore and find a book that looks like, let a book almost come to you in a way.
yeah.
Like I would say going in without sort of any, just like the intention of, like I've had this happen a couple times where it's like I see something on a shelf that might be interesting and I learn more from that book than I like ever imagined was possible going into the bookstore. So it's like
Mhm.
they, the resources have a way of finding you in a sense, kind of
Yes,
open yourself up
100%.
to it. So
100%.
awesome, man.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's important not to force anything. It's just to go with the flow.
Yeah.
Have self-trust, not wanting to put any pressure on ourselves. Oh, I should be there. I should be here. I should be there. You where we are, and then we must just accept, and then one step at a time, and then the evolution happens. It can be
Mm,
fast tracked.
absolutely, man. I mean, that's
Mm.
so beautifully said. We are where we are, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah,
That's perfectly okay.
yeah, man.
Awesome, man. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed listening to your perspective. Your tweets are very like, I was like, when I read your tweets, I was like, this guy's got wisdom. I really appreciate his perspective. It's enhanced when I'm just talking to you in person. It's like your tweets, like then boom, a whole nother level. But like very much resonate with everything you're saying and your message and all that you do. So I greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I think it was a lovely conversation. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, and thank you so much for the invite. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
although it was more of an impromptu,
Yeah, definitely.
but I suppose that's how these things goes, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the way, that's the way of it. It's total off the cuff improv, not even hopping on the call, not even necessarily realizing we were going to do the podcast now and just going with the flow of it.
Yeah, no, I
That's the
loved it. I
beauty.
loved it.
That's the
That's how I live. I like life.
yeah. Yeah.
Unplanned. Go with the flow. Trust your guts and instincts, and hope that it will guide you in the right direction. Yes,
100%.
I hope some of what we discussed will be helpful to somebody else. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it will be. I think a
yeah,
lot of people can take something from this conversation. And when
great,
it's
man.
out, I'm pretty quick with getting them out, so I'll have it out like next week. And when it's
Okay.
out, I'll send it over to you, and we'll connect, and we'll definitely have to do it again soon because I feel like we have more topics we could continue to cover.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you should. I mean, if you feel that we can continue that conversation, I'm more than happy to do that, especially if it's something that could be beneficial to somebody else. Certainly, I feel like having this conversation with you has contributed to my own growth as well. So that's why
Yeah,
I enjoy these conversations.
definitely.
I wish more and more people can have this kind of conversations in their dinner tables. It can become more normal to to
Absolutely.
to expand ourselves into this area.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
man. I feel the same
Mm.
way. And it's funny because like I do this podcast to like I would love to help other people and bring a perspective like to other people. But part of it is also very selfish because I love these I love having these conversations because I learn each time, I hop on a podcast. So there's a selfish element to me doing it, but
A good one. That's very
right.
good selfish. You must keep that one.
Right,
It's
exactly.
good selfishness, that one.
Exactly. So, in the end, I do like I've had messages people say, "Hey, your podcast is really giving me this perspective or like learn." So I'm like, I know it's helping people, and like the selfishness also like just great motivating factors to just keep doing it. Because I agree, if people can have these conversations, open hearted, looking to learn, the world at large would look a lot different. Like we would,
Yeah, that's how we transform the world. If you really want to change the world, this is how we do it.
right, right. Just listen and go with the flow. That's literally
Yeah,
it.
man. Yeah, man.
Oh man.
Thanks,
All right.
Evan. I really appreciate it, eh?
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, we have each other's contacts, and then we will
Yeah.
definitely continue to chat.
All right. Sounds good, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Cheers, eh?
Yep.
Okay, bye.
Bye.